back to Truth Be Told, and today I am here with Dwight for all of you audio listeners. My name is Max, and it's Max and Dwight here. We got a good friend of us behind the camera, so welcome here, and sounds like we have a question that we're going to get into chatting about. So
I found something on Reddit, and I want to read it. The thread is, how can I find God? Hello, I am an atheist. I have not been like myself recently, and my friends have taken notice. Everyone says that finding God will help me, but how do I find him?
It's a very good question. Well, the one thing that I have that comes to mind is we had a friend that recently asked a very, very similar question. I guess not recently, maybe a couple of years ago. Somebody told them that they needed to find Jesus. And I just, from what I recall, you had asked her in return, well, how would you find Jesus? And I think finding Jesus is the first step to finding God, because, Jesus is what is and was our living example on how we can, well,
I would say that...
Yeah, I'm losing a thought there.
Yeah, I would say in the first part of this is they've already started on that journey.
Yeah, they're already asking the question.
They're already asking the question about God. They're already asking that they've had someone that tell them they needed to find God and how they would do that. So God is in the mind, at least now, in that thought. So the second part, I would say, in this, and even before I take you to that conversation that I had with that lady that day, but now that they're asking others, why don't they ask God?
Mm-hmm.
God, would you show me who you are? Would you lead me on this journey?
Yeah, I think that's one of the a great question, actually, because a lot of people, I don't think that they can actually talk to God in a real conversational way.
And make it simple. I mean, the person, if you're an atheist, that's going to be awkward. Or been an atheist in words and saying, but there's more to it than this. So some of the things that they look at haven't been adding up. So there's got to be a God in place of that. But the simplicity of it to say, God, if you're real, if you're there, would you show me? Would you lead me? Mm-hmm. And so that would be the first part of that journey, is to pray to him and just ask him to reveal himself. Yeah. And the second part that I would say would be that the part where Diane is saying someone told her she needed to find Jesus. Yeah. And, and I asked her the question, well, how, if someone were to ask you that, how would you find Jesus? Mm-hmm. And so I encouraged her. Actually, I gave her a Bible, and I said, why don't you sit down and start with the Gospels. Yeah. And forget about what people have said about God, or what you've thought about God, what people have said about Jesus, or what you've thought about Jesus, what our culture says about Jesus, and just begin to read. Because when you find Jesus, you also find the Father, because Jesus said, the Father and I are one. Mm-hmm. And so as you begin to read through the Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, and I went over this again on Sunday with our folks, because I think it's so crucial. And
I think the important part is to, like you said, I have a thought. I think I know where you're going with that, but it's observe, get rid of the preconceived things, stuff, whatever it is, garbage, if you will, and just observe yourself. Read and look at who Jesus is, what he says, who he says it to, how he says it, who he touches. Because I think that shows you a living example of how you can begin to find who God really is.
Yeah, get rid of your own religious presuppositions.
I mean, that's what I've been doing, if you will.
Yeah, you get rid of those and begin to look at Jesus and ask him to reveal himself and to show who he really is, and watch as you said, just watch every interaction that he has with human beings, whether it's the religious Jews, whether it's somebody that needs to be healed, whether it's those that are hungry, whether it's the disciples, whether it's the women that he meets. Is phenomenal when you start reading through in a culture that had devalued somewhat the value of women. The way that Jesus talks to them, the way he treats them, and so you begin to look at that, and just keep your mind open, right? Opening up your mind to say, okay, God, if you are real, if you are really there, and will you reveal yourself? Will you show me who you are? Will you show me what you're like? And will you show me how you relate to people and how that you care for people? And as you're working through that journey, so step 1 is really praying. Step 2 is looking at that. I think step 3 is asking people that you think are living out this relationship with Jesus, asking them questions. Ask them the hard questions.
I agree, and I think, really the simplicity of it is coming back to step 1 and 3, but like 1, you're just asking God, just try to speak to him. And it's not some complex, I think sometimes it's easy to be like, well, I don't know how to pray. Well, the simplicity of just asking, because you won't learn if you don't ask. And I think asking that question, I know there's several atheists that have asked that question or set out to disprove that, and dug deep in order to go down that road. C.S. Lewis being one of them, and his life journey and writings. He found God basically at the core of it.
I'd add 2 more parts to that seeking. One would be ask somebody who you've watched their life change.
Well, that's I think there's that's physical, real evidence of God doing work in their life.
So somebody that you've known that their life has so radically changed, and you've known it from the past, and whether they were a wicked person, or whether they were simply indifferent to the whole gospel, the whole Jesus, the whole whether there is a God. But so ask them, what changed them? How did they find God? And what difference has that made in their life? And the other part I would add to that, the 5th part of it. Maybe we're getting too complex trying to put too many parts into it. But the other part would be to ask God to show you where he's at work around you.
Yes. Well, that's actually great, because when we're doubting stuff, especially in our men's group, or just chatting with brothers, that's the question that helped me. It helped me start to think about things. It helped me start to ask more questions, and be okay with asking questions. I've always been afraid of asking questions, if you will. But when we chat about that and start asking those questions, where is God at work? Then it causes you to start looking and seeing, and then asking more.
I think even asking where he's at work, but also asking God to show where he is in his creation, asking God to show things that normally you would say it just happened, or it was just some circumstances but see where God is
laid out, orchestrated.
And if it's in creation, you know that marvel of seeing something, and as you just happen to pass by, and there's that eagle that flies over, those swans that fly over. My wife talks often. She told me the other day that she's been driving on Emerson Trail, and 4 days or 4 times. The big swans. My wife absolutely adores the swans, and 4 times as she's traveling, and I haven't seen any, and so just that kind of a thing where God just he just shows up and say, yeah, see who I am, see what I can do. And don't be afraid to ask God, and don't be afraid to ask God the hard questions either.
Well, that's just it, because, as you know from my story, is some of those hard questions, it felt like I wasn't allowed to. Coming out of that world where you feel you're part of not religion, but like just church stuff in general. And I know it's completely different than not believing in God at all. Because I think if you, it was just very difficult to ask questions. So I see the importance, and I think asking that, just watching.
Greg Rochelle wrote a wonderful book, and the book is called The Christian Atheist. So it's well worth the read, because a lot of times as believers we would say, or the followers of Jesus, we would say, I believe, but we live as if God doesn't exist. And
exactly. I think there's so easy to do. Yeah, I think we can easily slip back to that at times, but I believe, that's a great thought to end on. What's the book called?
The Christian Atheist.
The Christian Atheist. Okay. Yeah. Anyway, well, thanks for joining us here today on this journey. And I think wherever you're at, the most important thing is to just start asking questions. Ask God. Yeah. Ask somebody that around you that you might have a connection or a relationship with God or Jesus already.
Change life.
Jesus is all about changing life. And so wherever you're at, start asking those questions. Thanks for joining us.